Some of you have noticed that I give the same answers all the time because I keep getting the same questions all the time, like every day. For example, here's an email I got this morning.
I converted to Islam because most other religions don't make sense, and Muslims answer questions unlike others.
Let's be blunt. No religion makes any sense because they all expect you to blindly believe impossible nonsense for no good reason. And they train you that if anybody challenges your conviction, you should not consider their criticisms fairly, not weigh out what they have to say. No, instead you need to take it as an attack on your identity and double down on your defenses, even when there is no defense, even when it's indefensible. Islam is in the category of religions that also threatens you with a fate worse than death if you don't blindly believe whatever you're told just because they told you to, because it's one of those religions that judges you with an unjust and indefensible evil. The God of infinite loving mercy and forgiveness will prove that he is infinitely none of those things because he will damn you to eternal torture, not over whether you're good or bad, but over what or whether you believed, as if that is somehow an issue of morality. Read the Quran. It's a mess. And not only is it full of scientific absurdities, but it also repeatedly states that to do good means to believe, as if there's no way to do good if you don't believe. And the Quran also says over and over again that anyone who does not believe is therefore doing evil. So there's no criteria for morality, only of gullibility, credulity, blind, subservient obedience, and obeisance to an erroneously assumed alleged authority. And you said that Islam is the only religion that answers questions, but lots of other religions answer questions too, and they all do it the same way. They all do it incorrectly. Jewish and Christian clerics answer questions the same way Muslims do. If it's a matter of theology, then they'll just make something up and assert it as if it was fact, as if they had any idea what they're talking about when they don't, because faith is pretending to know things you don't know. If it's a matter of science in conflict with scripture or faith, then they simply lie about it. And I have hundreds of videos on my channel showing how they do that over and over again. Religious faith is not like the truth, and it does not like the truth.
I don't believe 100% in Islam, but if others are not true, I'll take my chance here.
Why? What chance is there? What should matter is that we should all have a love of truth that is so strong that it would have two effects that both stand against faith. One, it should be that we would be honest enough to know better than to say that anything is true or the truth until we can show the truth of it, the evidence leading to that conclusion. Because if you can't show that it's true, then how could you know whether it's true? And you need to be able to show that before you risk your credibility by making an assertion you can't back up. Because it doesn't matter what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it. What is the reason? Because if there's no evidence for it, then there's no reason to believe it. And having no reason to believe something is a pretty good reason not to believe it, though we also have plenty of good reasons not to believe in Islam or Christianity or any other faith. Faith is the most dishonest and auto-deceptive position it is possible to have, because it means assuming and asserting things that are not evidently true nor even possible, and then defending that belief against all reason, regardless of any amount of evidence to the contrary. Those who believe in lies will lie for those beliefs. Two, understanding the truth and having some way to show that it is true should matter to all of us so much that we would not want to be fooled into believing anything that might not be true. And we have substantial evidence that each of the Abrahamic religions are false. We shouldn't believe anything completely either, only tentatively, only as long as it can withstand reasonable scrutiny. Consider accepting things on degrees of certainty rather than absolute certainty, because there are a few things we can be absolutely certain of. One of them being that a literal interpretation of the Torah, the Gospels, or the Quran is inevitably going to be wrong about something somewhere. If, for example, we absolutely know there was never a global flood of Noah's Ark, because we can prove that there wasn't. And we know that Adam and Eve never existed, that they're genetically impossible and contradicted by all the relevant data that we actually do have throughout paleontology, archaeology, anthropology, and genetics. A fool is one who too readily believes improbable claims from questionable sources on insufficient evidence. That describes each of the religions and their doctrines. So that's what believers are, fools.
I have Got some questions for you. Please answer them. It is a request. 1. A small change of some event could affect history of the world in some many ways. How do I believe that we got our perfect eyes just by changes of events?
Well, first off, our eyes are not perfect. They're not even superior. Raptors have the same eyes as we do, but theirs are more efficient. Octopods have the same type of eye that we do, but theirs are better. Other animals can see in a wider range of colors than we can, even into the range of what for us is an invisible spectrum. Secondly, the evolution of the eye is well understood, and it is the most explained organ in all of evolution. Look up the evolution of the eye on YouTube. Everybody's covered this already because Darwin had already explained that 165 years ago. He started by relating to his 19th century audience who had never heard such an idea before by stating that to suppose that the eye could have evolved by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. And that's the clip that the religious apologists shared with you. They shared just that part deliberately, deceptively, knowing that Darwin went on to say, yet reason tells me that of numerous gradations from a perfect and complex eye to one very imperfect and simple, each grade being useful to its possessor, can be shown to exist. If further, the eye does vary ever so slightly and the variations be inherited, which is certainly the case, and if any variation or modification in the organ be ever useful to the animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable to our imagination, can hardly be considered real. Darwin then went on for like 4 pages explaining the evolution of the eye. And what he proposed then has been tested in nature since and confirmed over and over again.
The human body is very complex, and when you think about the universe, it is really complex.
Yeah, but complexity only seems to confuse or confound simple minds that want very simple answers. Like that the only way anything ever happens is because a magic invisible man wished for that to happen, and all his wishes come true because magic. Believers believe such things because they cannot understand that patterns emerging from natural processes beginning at the molecular level on up will inevitably be vastly more complex than any alleged intelligent designer even could do administrating from the top down. And one of the hallmarks of intelligent design would be an efficient simplicity, such as we do not see in biology. Biochemistry is often obscenely, unnecessarily complex, and not very efficient either, indicating a haphazard configuration of blind processes working without an end goal. This excessive complexity and the inefficiency of it are actually facts and evidence against a creator.
2. If you are an atheist, why do you critique Islam? You might believe we don't like critics and might harm you. Why do you want to risk your life?
It's good that you admit your impression that Islam has a reputation of promoting and defending itself through violence. I've seen a few hints of that myself. But that's all the more reason to resist, isn't it? And to do so strongly in the strongest possible way without becoming violent. If violence is your tactic, then that's as good as an admission that you're wrong and you know that you have no logical defense for an illogical position. But that's not my position. I'm not afraid of Muslims. One, because I know there's only a few of them who pose any serious threat, and they're not likely to get a shot at me. And two, I'm kind of an older guy, and we're all going to die. Yeah, most of the ways to do that are not good, but martyrdom, I could do that. I would be proud to die for what I believe. I believe in truth, reason, rationality, science, knowledge, and understanding. All of that pits me against the irrational lies of religious faith. And if any terrorists out there know that about me, then that'll make me less of a target because they should know that killing me would promote my cause and hurt theirs.
3. Don't you think the world would be better with religion?
The world would always have been better if we had a culture of community without religious faith, which is a deliberately deceptive delusion, where their most celebrated values turn out to be no more than willful ignorance, unreasonable bigotry, and tribal prejudice, where the most bewildering inanity and stupidity are paraded as if they were wisdom. Faith has impeded, retarded, or reversed progress in every application it has ever touched, and it has a history of consistent oppression, suppression, criminal corruption, and cruel violations of human rights. There are a few exceptions, and those are typically little more than a feeble PR campaign, unable to counter the overwhelming awful of it all. And weighing the positives and negatives fairly, faith remains a net negative over the entire history of humanity, and particularly in our current time. Faith is not a virtue, it's a vice. Any belief that requires faith should be rejected for that reason alone.
Most people would rob, lie, cheat, steal, murder, do all kind of things because they know there isn't any consequences.
So you think that if you go around killing and raping and stealing and vandalizing, that there won't be any consequence? None at all. As if you won't be arrested, beat up, and maybe even shot by police and drugged to jail to waste the rest of your life in prison? Knowing that in the US, 1 out of 10 convicts in prison is Muslim, where there are only 1 out of 100 in the free population. Why is that? You don't think there will be any consequences? Really? You don't think that your friends will disrespect you, that your loves will abandon you, that your family will deny you, or at least lose all pride or interest in you, and that society will reject you? Because let me tell you, even if there was a God, regardless, history will be our judge.
Many people I have met fear something could go wrong if they do a sin. They hold themselves back because of religion.
Come now, even you must surely know better than that. Part of the reason that the devoutly religious criminals are so overrepresented in prisons is because they're more emotional, irrational, and reactionary due to righteous indignation, but also because they're either convinced that their God understands what they do and forgives them for it every time, or they're convinced that their God wanted them to do that awful thing and that God will reward them in heaven. A lot of scriptures were written in prison because of the impression that having a personal relationship with God means that the rules don't even apply to you. And believers are no more moral than unbelievers, often less so. Neither Christianity nor Islam have any means of promoting morality, nor even of understanding what morality is, because they don't understand reason. Instead, they believe in arguments from authority, which is a logical fallacy. In order to understand what morality is, we need to understand the reason and philosophy of why something is moral or immoral, and the Abrahamic religions can't even do that. All they do is tell you to obey what the clergy says, because the men in dresses pretend to speak for a God they made up, and they use that phantasm to control you and empower themselves. The men in the white dresses and the men in the black dresses say that the same God is only their God, and that their God is going to punish all those other people. We have all these different religions with mutually exclusive and conflicting scriptures, all claiming to be the absolute truth and the revealed word of the one true God, even when they're talking about different gods or versions of God. And it's not possible that every religion is right, and it's not likely that any religion is right. But they can all be wrong, and their scriptures are wrong about practically everything, scientifically and historically, ethically and morally. If anyone tells you that to believe whatever they say just because they say so, keep your eyes on them as you back away and check your pockets as you go. They are not to be trusted. No faith can show that they've got anything more accurate than every other faith. All of them together can't even show that there's a there, not one aspect of the so-called supernatural that they can show to be true. So there's no truth in any religious faith, but there are a hell of a lot of lies in all of them. That seems to be all they really have. So that's all they are. And thus, picking a faith means picking out which indefensible nonsense you want to fool yourself into pretending, when instead you should be trying to improve your understanding of whatever we both can show to be real.